Book 12 finishes Odysseus' account of his wanderings, covering his encounters with the Sirens, the monsters Scylla and Charybdis, and the cattle of the sun. Returning to Aea, Circe's island, Odysseus and his men see to the burial of Elpenor. Circe advises Odysseus on the dangers he will face as he continues his journey, and then the Ithacans depart. When they approach the island of the Sirens, who lure men to death with their song, Odysseus plugs the ears of his men with wax. As for himself, he has the men tie him to the mast so that he can listen to the sweet and deadly singing. Hearing this, he is wild to stay, but the men continue rowing onwards until he can hear the Sirens no longer. Later, the voyagers approach the narrow strait between the cliff monster Scylla and the water monster Charybdis. As they are watching to make sure they don't get sucked beneath the water by Charybdis, Scylla snatches 6 of Odysseus' men and gobbles them up. They sail on to Thrinacia, where the sun god Helios keeps his cattle. They've been warned that harming the cattle of the sun will bring disaster upon them. But once the provisions give out, Odysseus' men are unable to resist killing and eating some of the cattle. Helios complains to Zeus, who punishes the Greeks by sending a terrible storm to hit them once they're away from the island. Their ship is ripped apart by a stroke of lightning, and all the men perish. Odysseus alone survives, turning the wreckage of the ship into a raft. The wind drives him back to Charybdis, where he is nearly sucked down into the water. Then he floats for days before coming ashore on the island of Ogygia, where he is rescued by the nymph Calypso. The end of Book 12 ends Odysseus' recital of his wanderings. Here, the storytelling again reflects on itself. Odysseus sees no reason to repeat the story of his time with Calypso and his departure from her island, and neither does the poet. On the other hand, we hear about the cattle of the sun twice in warnings from Tiresias and Circe before we hear the actual adventure. This repetition is typical of oral tradition. A long poem such as the Odyssey would be sung over a period of days at social gatherings. Despite Homer's emphasis on the respect due to poets, the listeners could be distracted by the feasting and other amusements. Repetition helped listeners keep the thread of the story straight. Some scholars have speculated that Charybdis, who sucks men down into the water but is never actually seen, was based on legends about a terrible whirlpool the Greeks had encountered on their travels. Some have thought that the many-legged, many-headed Scylla is based on nightmare imaginings of giant octopuses, squids, or even spiders. People have usually thought of the Sirens as being much like mermaids, who are also often believed to snare men with their singing. The Sirens tempt Odysseus with the claim that they know everything that happens throughout the entire world. The lure of complete knowledge is an important motif in mythic traditions. The gods keep the knowledge of some things to themselves, and they decide how much knowledge they want to share with human beings. But some human beings want to know more, of course. Some of them want to know everything, and sometimes they pay a terrible price for that desire. Question 1. When the Ithacans approach the island of the Sirens, who lure men to death with their song, Odysseus plugs the ears of his men with wax. As for himself, he is too strong of will to be affected by the Sirens and their song, is deaf and therefore unaffected by the Sirens and their song, has the men tie him to the mast so that he can listen to the sweet and deadly singing, has the men sing a song of their own to drown out the Sirens and their song. When the Ithacans approach the island of the Sirens, who lure men to death with their song, Odysseus plugs the ears of his men with wax. As for himself, he has the men tie him to the mast so that he can listen to the sweet and deadly singing. Question 2. Despite Homer's emphasis on respect due to poets, the listeners could be distracted by the feasting and other amusements. What technique, typical of the oral tradition, is used to help listeners keep the thread of the story? Iambic pentameter. repetition, exclusion, song. Despite Homer's emphasis on the respect due to poets, the listeners could be distracted by the feasting and other amusements. Repetition helped listeners keep the thread of the story straight. Question 3. The sirens tempt Odysseus with the claim that they know everything that happens throughout the entire world, will show him pleasure beyond his wildest imagination, can convince Poseidon to forgive him, will return him to Ithaca and his beloved Penelope. The sirens tempt Odysseus with the claim that they know everything that happens throughout the entire world. Book 13 covers Odysseus' departure from the land of the Phaeacians and his arrival home on Ithaca. After a day of feasting, the ship sets off, with Odysseus asleep on the deck. At Ithaca, the Phaeacians carry the sleeping Odysseus ashore and leave him on the beach with all his gifts. When they return to Scheria, Poseidon punishes the Phaeacians for helping Odysseus by turning the ship into a great rock just off the coast. Odysseus awakens and has no idea where he is. Athena appears, disguised as a shepherd. When she asks him who he is, he immediately concocts a fictional biography for himself. Athena, revealing her true identity, laughs and says that Odysseus is just a natural liar. When he is persuaded to believe he really is home, Odysseus kisses the earth and offers thanks to the local goddesses. Then he and Athena get down to business, hiding his treasure and plotting his homecoming. Hearing more about the suitors, he feels he has narrowly missed suffering Agamemnon's fate. Athena promises to fight at his side when the time comes. Athena transforms Odysseus' physical appearance so that he will look like a weathered old beggar dressed in rags and skins. She sends him to see his faithful swineherd. Hearing that she has sent Telemachus on a trip abroad, the travel-weary Odysseus fears for his son, but she reassures him. The almost oppressive hospitality of Odysseus' hosts continues. They even take up collections to give him yet more presents. They are the best hosts of the Odyssey, but they get caught up in the conflicting aims of the gods. The Phaeacians are right to offer Odysseus hospitality, and they are destined to take him home. But what fate decrees, and some gods want, makes other gods angry. In helping Odysseus, they have offended Poseidon, and they must pay the price. They have done the right thing, but that hasn't helped them. The story of a ship turned to a rock probably reflects a tradition about a particular place, and may even reflect traditions about an ethnic group believed to have once willingly transported travelers around the Mediterranean Sea. Many peoples the world over explain unusually shaped rock formations with stories about ships or monsters, animals or people that were turned into stone. When Odysseus wakes alone on the shore, he immediately suspects the Phaeacians of having cheated and abandoned him. Like many clever and manipulative people, he suspects the motives of others. His first priority is to count his gifts. He lies to the shepherd almost by reflex, thinking it dangerous to reveal who he is until he knows where he is. Even when he learns that the shepherd is actually Athena, he refuses to believe that she has really brought him home, and he even sulks at her for having abandoned him in recent years. The goddess is not offended. In fact, she is amused by his distrust and speaks of his lying almost with affection. She knows that it is Odysseus' character to be wily and suspicious. In this, they are almost two of a kind, since she herself is one of the cleverest of the gods. This explains in part why Odysseus is such a favorite of hers. She is even generous enough to let him in on the behind-the-scenes disagreements of the Olympians that have kept her from revealing herself to Odysseus until now. Question 1. In helping Odysseus, the Phaeacians have offended Zeus, Athena, Poseidon, Ares. helping Odysseus, the Phaeacians have offended Poseidon, and they must pay the price. Question 2. How does the goddess Athena react to Odysseus's distrust? She is offended. She is disappointed. She is amused. She pretends not to notice. The goddess Athena is not offended. In fact, she is amused by his distrust and speaks of his lying almost with affection. Question 3. When Odysseus is persuaded to believe he really is home, he kisses the earth and rushes to find his beloved Penelope, weeps uncontrollably, praises Zeus for his safe return to Ithaca, offers thanks to the local goddesses. When Odysseus is persuaded to believe he really is home, he kisses the earth and offers thanks to the local goddesses. In books 14 and 15, Odysseus meets his first ally, the family swineherd, and Telemachus returns home from his travels. The swineherd, Eumaeus, receives the ragged stranger kindly. He immediately complains of the freeloading suitors and mourns his absent master. He has given up hope that Odysseus will ever return. Odysseus tests Eumaeus' loyalty further by telling him that he intends to go to the palace in the city in order to beg work from the suitors. Eumaeus discourages this and promises to look after the stranger himself. The stranger thanks him and then asks about the fate of Odysseus' parents. He learns that his father, Laertes, is still alive, although living in seclusion. We also learn the story of the swineherd, who turns out to be a Syrian prince who was kidnapped as a child and sold into slavery. In Sparta, Athena comes to Telemachus and warns him to go to his ship at Pylos and return home. At the Pylian harbor, Telemachus agrees to help Theoclymenus, a prophet who is fleeing home because he has killed a man. Arriving in Ithaca, Telemachus follows Athena's instructions by leaving the ship early to avoid the suitor's ambush. He sends Theoclymenus to stay with a friend, not wanting to subject him to the rude behavior of the suitors. The ship sails on to the main harbor at Ithaca, and Telemachus heads for the swineherd's house. There are many swineherds in myth who have actual or symbolic powers, and it is no accident that Eumaeus is a swineherd. In his case, what we have of the tradition does not show him as a figure of supernatural power, but his importance as a pig person is still evident. He is not merely a lowly servant, but a prince sold into slavery, and he will remain Odysseus's key ally, apart from Telemachus, through the end of the epic. Eumaeus combines in one person the simple herdsman who lives close to the earth and is loyal to his master, the royal prince who understands appropriate social behavior, and a mythic figure who has true instincts about people and whose very presence strengthens his master's chances. Telemachus still needs a lot of help from Athena, but he's growing up fast. Now he is known in his own right to the royal houses of Pylos and Sparta, and they accept him as his father's heir. Such alliances will be important to the boy's future. In the meantime, he does commit a breach of etiquette by avoiding King Nestor's hospitality on the way home. However, the gods are hurrying him on his way, and the situation at home is urgent enough to warrant a lapse in good manners. Book 15 includes 2 omens in which birds of prey are seen carrying their dead victims. Ancient Greeks believed in the importance of omens. All of nature was carefully watched for the hints it might offer about future events, but bird omens were especially important, and some people, such as Helen and Theoclymenus, were believed especially gifted at interpreting them. The omens are coming thick and fast now, and they all point to the king's impending return and the triumph of Odysseus and his heirs. Question 1. Odysseus tests Eumaeus' loyalty by telling him that he intends to go to the palace in the city in order to pursue the fair Penelope, steal Penelope's precious jewels, beg work from the suitors, aid Poseidon in destroying what is left of Odysseus's family. Odysseus tests Eumaeus' loyalty by telling them that he intends to go to the palace in the city in order to beg work from the suitors. Eumaeus discourages this and promises to look after the stranger himself. Question 2. Odysseus learns that his father Laertes perished in a storm sent by Poseidon, has sailed to faraway lands in search of his son, is still alive, although living in seclusion, fell victim to the song of the sirens. Odysseus learns that his father Laertes is still alive, although living in seclusion. Question 3. Ancient Greeks believed in the importance of omens. Book 15 includes 2 in which birds of prey are seen carrying their dead victims, golden fleece, olive branches, ambrosia. Book 15 includes 2 omens in which birds of prey are seen carrying their dead victims. Both point to the king's impending return and the triumph of Odysseus and his heirs. In Book 16, Odysseus is reunited with his son. Telemachus arrives at the swineherd's hut as the men are having breakfast. Like the well-brought-up boy he is, he refuses to take the ragged old man's chair. Under the watchful eye of the stranger, the boy questions Eumaeus about Penelope's behavior. While Telemachus is sending Eumaeus to tell Penelope that he has reached home safely, Athena comes to Odysseus and restores him to his true appearance. She tells him the time has come to reveal his identity to his son. When the astonished Telemachus sees that the ragged old stranger has become a handsome, powerful man in the prime of life, indeed, Athena has made Odysseus look even better than he normally does, the boy thinks the stranger is a god. In fact, at first, Telemachus, true son to the father, is suspicious and refuses to believe that the stranger really is Odysseus. But his father is persuasive. "No other Odysseus will ever return to you," he says. Telemachus is soon convinced, and father and son weep in each other's arms. Then they settle down to plan the destruction of the suitors and those servants who have proved themselves disloyal, especially among the women. Back in the city, both Eumaeus and a herald from the ship arrive to tell Penelope that her son is all right. Penelope is relieved, and the suitors are furious. The worst of them, Antinous and Eurymachus, set about planning another attempt on the young prince's life. Odysseus has spent many of his wanderings with women of supernatural origins, powerful women who take what they want, and they all want him. But he is well aware of the normal human rules for women. In ancient Greek society, those rules mean enforced seclusion, obedience to the men of the household, and closely supervised chastity. Telemachus is in awe when his father suggests the 2 of them can defeat the suitors, for there are over 100 of them, plus their servants. But Odysseus has the support of Zeus and Athena, and he has a plan as well. Telemachus has escaped an ambush of the suitors. Now, the suitors will face a more successful ambush. The suitors, who until now have been an undifferentiated mass of freeloaders, begin to be shown as individual personalities, and this will make it more effective when they are killed. We also begin to see that some of them are worse than others. The worst of the suitors are now more than ever determined to kill Telemachus. That is the way with human beings. They fear those they have wronged, and this increases their own hatred. The best of the suitors, Amphinomus, refuses to kill a royal prince without the approval of the gods. This shows he has the right beliefs according to the standards of his culture, but it won't save him. All of the suitors have been marked for death. Homeric tradition may have been in conflict with itself about the justness of Odysseus killing every single one of his suitors without exception. Certain behavior is felt to deserve death, but at the same time, blood feuds are bad because they disrupt society and perpetuate themselves endlessly. It is Odysseus's role as a warrior hero to lay waste to his enemies, but it is his role as a wise king to rule with moderation. Odysseus's determination to wipe out all of the suitors sets up a tension between appropriate mythic behavior and normal human behavior. Question 1. In ancient Greek society, which was not among the accepted rules for women? Enforced seclusion, obedience to the men of the household, sacrifice of their firstborn, closely supervised chastity. In ancient Greek society, accepted rules for women included enforced seclusion, obedience to the men of the household, and closely supervised chastity, not the sacrifice of their firstborn child. Question 2. Who is characterized as the best of the suitors? Antinous, Eurymachus, Amphinomus, Melanthius. The best of the suitors, Amphinomus, refuses to kill a royal prince without the approval of the gods. This shows he has the right beliefs according to the standards of his culture, but it won't save him. Question 3. Odysseus's determination to wipe out all of the suitors sets up a tension between Zeus and Penelope, appropriate mythic behavior and normal human behavior, the wishes of the gods and the wishes of men, Odysseus and Telemachus. Odysseus's determination to wipe out all of the